Hey, fellow Rangers, it's me, Mario. Today I'm finally talking about engineers, a strategy I wanted to talk about for quite a bit. I was asked about it on other videos, and I just didn't find the time to do that. So finally today we're going to talk a bit about those little men over here that are going to help you move the train towards the end of the track. That can be a winning strategy every now and then. It's actually pretty powerful. Let's take a look at why engineers can be strong. They can get incredibly good conversions. By the end of the game, if you take a look, they are going to get 9 points for basically 0 coins, since this action does cost 3 coins, but it's going to give you back 3 coins and then teleport somewhere else. Overall, they just get very good conversions that the other strategy cannot get. Like 5 coins for 8 points is something that no other strategy can get. So they can get really good conversions in the late game, and they can get a pretty significant economic boost in the early game thanks to Station Master tiles. Some of those tiles are really good, some of them are middling, and some of them are pretty bad, depending on the setup and depending on their position on the stations. But they can get good conversions and good economic boost, and that's something that's really strong when you're playing a good strategy. They can also be quite versatile, I would say. I mean, they're not really that flexible, but getting an engineer in the early game and getting a station master tile isn't bad. And engineers are the strategy that, in my opinion, are the easiest to hybridize with other strategies. You can get a few engineers and spend that on station master tile and then pivot on some buildings or more probably on cows. Or you can actually start with a cowboy and get a few cows, or with a builder and get a few buildings down, and then you can get engineers and really hit the train track and try, if not getting to the end of it, at least try to get some good station master tiles, leaving down the workers you got before, the cowboys or the builders, because you don't need them anymore. So it's overall a good strategy that it can be versatile. Another reason because of which it can be pretty versatile, it's because of the auxiliary actions. Engineers, thanks to all the stations they are going to hit, are going to unlock way more discs than your average strategy. So they can be versatile. They can unlock this one and get very good deliveries in the late game thanks to some extra certificates. They can get more train movements to adjust depending on the number of engineers they got. They can do a few weird stuff. Like this action is still not very good. I should make a video just for it. But they are, let's say, more versatile than the others. Engineers are also a bit different from the other two strategies because they get pretty much two main different paths to follow. The first one is the Station Master Tile Engineer. The Station Master Tile Engineer doesn't need too many workers. Sometimes you can get away just by getting a few of them and ending the game without any bonus for the last two workers. They are going to get probably 3 or 4 Station Master tiles, depending on what's available. They are going to get good deliveries, like very good deliveries, depending on which they are going to get. They get a lot of points from Station Master tiles, some points from the stations, and normally a few points thanks to other things like they got a lot of coins they were able to spend on hazards or things like that, depending on which station master tiles are out. This is a strong strategy that can work, but it's really, really, really hinging upon the setup. So it really depends on that. The other strategy, which is more reliable but it's still very tricky, is getting the engineers to the end of the track. You need a lot of heads to do that. Normally, you're going to get at most 2 station master tile. I would say that more often than not, you're just going to take one, depending again on what's available. But you can get away with two. I don't think it's possible to get three and get to the end of the track. You're going to leave too many heads on stations, so it's going to be hard to move a lot. Oh, by the way, there is a magic number. There are a few magic numbers you should remember with engineers. You're going to need 4 steps to jump from one station to another one in the early game for the station master tiles, while later on you just need 5 steps. And by the end of the track, you're going to need a last move of 6, which is normally doable thanks to this building over here and some auxiliary actions. So you don't need to have 6 workers, but you need to take this long step by the end. So the strategy is incredibly strong. It's explosive. Like by the end of the game, they can bury the other players in points because you're going to get such amazing conversions. Nobody can keep up with you. The only problem is the timing. You should try to hit the last station, this one, which let you teleport normally to this one. I would say then in like at least 75% of your games, you should try to avoid this station and maybe get it back when you teleport back. Because this station is pretty costly in the early game or in the mid game too, and it's most of the time not worth it. It's way better to try to reach the end of the track. But you should time um, this station um, so that it's going to be your last move of the game or your second to last move if you're delivering or still getting a good conversion by, I don't know, picking up a hazard because you have the hazard station master tile. What you don't want to happen is rushing till the station and having the game uh, still go on after that because you won't get any good conversion after that point, and the other players are probably still getting good conversions, mostly cowboys, I would say. So you really need a good timing, but you also really need to reach a station. So the timing is the most tricky thing you need to keep in mind when playing engineers. You really want to reach the station as your last or second to last move. Anything else might see you failing. So that's already something that might make engineers, I wouldn't say bad, but more difficult than other strategy. But there are a few other things that make engineers a less reliable strategy. I want to say, I played plenty of game going full on engineers or just going for station master tiles, and I was able to win with them. So going for engineers is a good strategy. What is not possible, in my opinion, is for 2 players to go for engineers, like really heavy on engineers, and being able to succeed. I've never seen 2 players fighting for the first spot when they both went for engineers. So I think that when playing in 4 players, which is mainly what I play these days, is you're going to see 2 players going for either cowboys or builders, one other player going for the other strategy, and one player going for engineers. It's not like that clear and that easy to see. But basically, if 2 players are competing for engineers, it's very unlikely they're going to succeed. All the competitive players know this, so they might take engineers in the early game to fight a bit for early steps and to get a station master tile each, but then they are going to leave them there. It's it's tricky. I don't think it's possible for 2 players to go for engineers because they are going to fight too much for station masters tiles, and they're going to fight too much for the spots on the stations. I know that discs from many players can be left on one station, but the problem is that engineers have already some timing issues that I have enlightened before. And if somebody is actually occupying the station you're going to get, that can be very, very crippling for you. You can skip it, but then the other players may go to the other one, and then what are you going to do? Are you going to skip that one too? So yeah, going full engineers for 2 players is very tricky. You can sometimes, very rarely, see somebody going for engineer with station master tiles and the other guy going full on engineers, but it really requires the proper setup. And that's one of the most important things for engineers. They are so reliant on the position of the neutral buildings. There are basically no good buildings for engineers. Like you might think that this one is a good one. This one is the one that gives you 2 certificates if you discard a black cow and 1 coin per each engineer, but this building is actually pretty bad. It does cost 3 builders, which is not too much, but it's pretty bad. And the other one that there is in the game, that one is used to be um, 5A, Right now it's a bit different and it does cost for builders, which basically makes it unplayable in most scenarios for engineers. So they're really reliant on the setup. The good thing is that they have basically three buildings that they can work with if they are going for station masters. Because both the building that are going to give you a bandit and advance the train can work. You can get 4 steps out of it, two thanks to the auxiliary action and two paying 2 coins. And the two buildings for engineers also are also pretty important. You need to hit two among of these three if you go for station masters. But if you want to go and ring the bell, which is the name for ending the track, because there used to be a bell over here, you need to hit these two buildings. Um, this one will let you move the train depending on the number of engineers you get, and this one does the same. This one is going to also give you two auxiliary actions, and this one instead is going to give you um, a certificate and an objective card. Talking a bit about this building, early on you're for sure going to get the certificate. That's going to help you get good deliveries. But later on, you're going to get objectives, probably to help you scoring well. So an engineer need to do a bit of a puzzle. They need a lot of different pieces to come together so that they will be able to win. That's the tricky part. The good part is that they are going to get normally very good deliveries and an explosive turn by the end of the game. But yeah, so the first thing that makes them difficult is that they are so reliant on the position of neutral buildings. They are still going to place down some buildings, some taxers, and the 4 building of choice in this game is 4B, which is going to help you a bit getting good deliveries. But I think that 4A, the one that lets you pick up a hazard, is even better because it might help with some station master tile and it might help getting points in other ways. Because sometimes with engineers, you're missing ways to get points because you get a lot of coins from deliveries because you're not going to pay taxes for the crosses. But sometimes it's not easy to find a way to spend those coins without wasting moves. So I already talked about the fact that they are so reliant on neutral buildings, that they have basically no good private building. The station master tile order is also very important. Like this one early on is pretty good. 12 coins. I know that a lot of people don't like this one. I really love it if it's early on. It's going to help you get more heads fast enough. But if this one is later on, then it's pretty bad. Also, the one that is going to give you points for the heads, it's better if it's later on because early on it doesn't do anything. This one is also better if it's later on. If there's a one that's going to give you 2 permanent certificates, it's of course better if it's a bit early on. But I would say that this one, for example, is a pretty balanced setup. You can get this one early on. You can maybe jump over this one and get instead this one or this one. This one is very good because you're pretty much always going to get at least 3 points out of it thanks to another station master tile, but normally you can get away with 6 or even 9 points. This one is amazing, of course, if you go for engineers, and it's alright if it's late. I mean, it's good either way. It's good if it's early, it's good if it's late. This one should reliably give you at least 6 points and normally 9 or even 12. So this one is also a good one. This one is a good setup for engineers because there are these two buildings that are close to each other. That's true. But you can place 4B so that it's going to help you jump over the last part of the loop, or you can just, upgrade the disc in Chicago for the extra movement and hop over all this part of the loop and go back over here. And if over here there are going to be a few hazards, this part is going to get taxied anyway, so you're not like giving up steps, stopping here and then here. It's not a bad setup for engineers, I would say, this one. And the last really important thing to keep in mind when going engineers, which can be a problem but can also be pretty good, is that they are so reliant on jerseys. You really want to discard jerseys early on and later on because the value you get out of them is incredibly good. They help you cycle the deck fast and have good hands for deliveries. And Being able to hit jerseys make it so that the fourth one can be used more easily, because this one is actually trickier than the cowboy ones for sure. I would say it is as tricky as the builder's fourth guy, because it's not easy to get enough coins to go for three hires. Like if you go here and you want to get three heads because you are going to buy the fourth one and then the fifth and the sixth, it's not always easy to, make everything come together, because you need jerseys, you need enough coins, you need a good timing on the track. It's very tricky to go for engineers, but it's so rewarding if you can do that. And I would actually say that having jerseys in your hand is a good way by itself to go engineers if the setup is alright ish. I'm going to do this in a game I'm having right now. Another thing I want to comment is that these two players got themselves one engineer each. I don't think that's a good action in general, even though the fact that this building is in position B makes it so that it's like probable that players are going to stop here no matter what, if somebody builds anything here or here. So I would say that overall it depends a lot. What I like to do a lot with engineers in four players is to start by the end of the track and jump straight up to Kansas City, get the coins, go to the building NBA, the building, the worker market, and double hire. I think that double hiring is more important for engineers than for everybody else, because going through three cowboys straight up, it's not that good. Like sometimes with two cowboys, you can already get a good cemental or you can get a cheap three. But with three cowboys, you're going to get, yeah, a cheap four, but it's not that strong. I would say that the breaking point for cowboys are normally two and then four to get the five value cow. The same can be said for builders normally love to get to two to build the four of choice and then go straight up to four to get the free building action. We're going to talk about it later on in another video. But with engineers, you actually really want to get three of them, because three of them will let you get two stops, one here and one here, and get the first station master tile. And that I would say it's pretty decent. And you don't really want to go straight up for the fourth one, and by that I mean getting the second one and then getting three is not incredibly good. It's not as good as for the other strategies. So I would say that going for a double hire straight up with engineers works pretty well. And that's, I would say, pretty much it. I mean, there are a lot of things that can be said about engineers. Normally, engineers can get easy points from objectives because a lot of the objectives require stations or a mix with a mix of stations, bandits, and hazards. I mean, I know that there are some objectives that require cows that might be tricky, but yeah, I would say that on average, they can get more points from stations. So there's that. I think that I've said everything that I wanted to say about engineers. It's already probably a long enough video for you to find some good information out of. And yeah, well, let me know if you have some questions, because engineers are way harder to play than cowboys, I would say. So if you have some questions, I'm here to answer them. All right, guys, see you. Myers out.